the next 30 minutes, hopefully, and go over. This is going to be a brief version. I've got longer versions that I will share those resources for you or with you. The purpose of the alternative process, the purpose of today, this particular presentation, is to share information with you about it and to inform community colleges on how to opt in to the plan. This alternative plan is connected to federal financial aid. So if you're a community college, you're the ones using the federal financial aid plan. If you're an ROE or high school district or a CBO and you're working with a community college, getting your students transitioned there through an IET or some other process, you need to be talking to those colleges so they can get into this plan, so they can be part of it. So, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Documents that are available to you is the full plan. And we intentionally, I think it's about a 12-page plan, 13 pages maybe. We didn't want it to be super long. And honestly, Department of Ed said, we don't want this to be super long. So we tried to keep it succinct and user-friendly as much as possible. Institutional participation form, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, and a one-pager. All of these are different resources that I will tell you where those are in a slide. For some background about ability to benefit, because sometimes, I know some of you are super informed of this and some of you are going, what is this she's talking about? It's a provision under the Higher Education Act that allows adults without a high school diploma or equivalency who are participating in a career pathway program at a Title IV, which is financial aid eligible institution, to have access to federal financial aid. Typically, when a student goes in and fills out their FAFSA form, they have to check either they have a high school diploma or HSE, or they do not. If they do not, they are not typically eligible for federal money. This ability to benefit is an alternative for a way to make that happen. In order to be eligible for ability to benefit, which is because, you know, we like letters and acronyms, ATB, a student must demonstrate that they are college ready by doing one of these three things. One, passing an ATB approved standardized test. So this is a test that's been approved by US Department of Education. They set the test, they set the scores level. So students have to pass that, or students can successfully attain 6 college credit hours. Seems doable, sort of. Or complete a state process, as approved by the Secretary of Education. This is what we're talking about, is option number 3. When we started looking at this, started talking about building this plan, what should it do, who should we involve, what, all of that, there was a survey that ICCB did in 2019. And one of the questions we ask are, what are the challenges that your institution's having right now with the current 3 ATB options? And the most common answers were there was a lack of awareness or knowledge. So people didn't know what it was, how to use it, how it worked, what were those requirements, or the current provisions were too limiting, or people were uncertain about what is an eligible career pathway, and the most common one really was internal coordination was too challenging to implement, because as you can imagine, this involves financial aid. But if you're talking about students without a high school diploma or GED, you're probably involving adult education. And if you're talking about a career pathway, they're probably headed towards some sort of CTE. So now you have 3, in addition to all of the regular enrollment services, the advising, you know, all of these places. And it just, some of the colleges said there was too many people involved and we just couldn't make it happen. So we took all those things into consideration. We also asked, what are student challenges to the current ATB provisions? So a standardized test can create anxiety and are not always valid measures of readiness. We know many students in an adult ed classroom struggle with standardized tests or tests in general. We know there are students that are in the CTE world. They're there because they do better with hands-on, doing it kinds of activities. So sticking them in front of a test where they have to recite literature and math skills and chemistry skills, they may go, yeah, I don't have it. So this isn't always a valid measure of if they're ready for college. Standardized tests can be costly and time sensitive. Who's going to pay for that test? When is it done? How is it done? Who's offering it? Where does that happen? All of those kinds of things. And pursuing 6 credit hours as the other common option without financial aid poses a financial burden on students. College is not cheap. I mean, depending on where you go, it can be cheaper than other locations, but 6 credit hours still costs money. And how do you get that all done? So those are the most common student challenges to the current test or 6 hours. So Illinois said, we're going to put together a state-defined process as the alternative method number 3. So we got a group of working people from across the state. On the left side here is everyone that was involved in that. Some of them are still involved with adult ed. Some of them were CTEs. We have a chief academic officer. We have Lisa Jones from DCEO. We had financial aid officers. We tried to get a variety of people because this plan impacts everybody. The objectives of this particular, of the plan and this particular group were to establish well-documented processes for the creation of the plan, engage stakeholders and subject matter experts from across the state to advise on what should be in this, review the Department of Ed requirements and how other states have met those requirements, identify recommendations based on effective practices, identify current barriers to colleges, and work with institutional partners to implement ATB locally. And that's kind of where we're at with you all, is this last one, working with you to help implement ATB. So the plan elements, everything listed on the screen is a requirement from the Department of Education, except there's 3 that are not. A background, and in this section, we just talked about the background in Illinois, how many have been using it. We talked about that survey we did, just some background lead up information. All of these pieces are required. And then Appendix A and Appendix B are 2 pieces that we have added, but hopefully it's to benefit the reader that's going to understand why they should be part of this. So let's look at a couple of these pieces. The program design. It has to be administered in a career pathway system. And in Appendix B, we list out those eligible career pathways. The ideal thing is that ability to benefit would be used during IET implementation, because the goal of an IET or ICAPS in Illinois is that students do not have their high school diploma yet, but they are working on earning college credit. So if we can use ability to benefit to help pay for some of those courses and that tuition, that's going to help the student. IET, you're all probably very familiar with this, is adult education literacy, workforce preparation, and workforce training. Those are the 3 pieces that must be in every IET. And there's the legal quote from where it needs to be from. Legal quote's not the right word, but and within this, there needs to be strong wraparound supports. We know that as well, and ICAP students need to be supported while they're going through all of this process. Student eligibility. So how do we know if students are going to be eligible? Under this plan, we said they must be an adult learner. So they must be beyond age of compulsory education. So they must be 17 or older. But this does not include dual credit students or students who would otherwise be in K-12 education. Learners meet all of the eligible criteria for federal financial aid, because this is, again, like I said, in connection to the federal financial aid. If federal financial aid says you need to have A, B, C, and D, then this is E. You still have to have all of those plus this. The learner does not meet the original ATB criteria, meaning they don't have the test score or they don't have 6 credit hours yet. Ideal candidates are students who are enrolled in an early school leaver transition program or an ICCB approved alternative methods for credentialing for high school equivalency programming, or they have successfully completed a bridge program within adult education. So again, we're trying to lay out who are these students that are going to most likely benefit from this plan using ability to benefit. So assessment, this is a key thing that we had to we knew from DOE, and we had to make sure the plan said assessment of each student's existing capabilities through means other than a single standardized test. So we cannot say, we're not going to use these two things. Instead, you must have X score on a TABE test alone. You can't do that because they already have a single standardized test as an option. So what we have said is that institutions need to utilize 2 or more assessment methods as provided below. Some of these include, these are not necessarily all you can use, but these are some options. So their GED ready practice tests show that they are at that ready level, likely to pass. Instructor or employer referrals. The instructor writes a letter. High school transcript review, HSE or ESL assessments, writing samples, student interviews. Sometimes we just have that student that we know is ready to move on. They're going to be an amazing student. They're in class every day. They have amazing attendance. They're making level gains. They're doing all the work, but they just can't test well. Well, get a couple of these put together, and at least 2, and then you can possibly use that as a student eligibility. Evidence must be documented in the student file. So, because this may be requested as part of the monitoring that ICCB is going to be obligated to do per DOE. So if you're doing a student interview, whether you record it or you just write down the questions, kind of like a job interview, you have the questions in front of you and you make notes as to their answers, all of those things are options. But again, you need to have 2 or more of some of these or an additional method in order to get that student to count as eligible. Required student services. These are required by, again, in the DOE plan, they say you must address each of these 6 options. Assessments, what we just talked about. How are you assessing the student to know they are eligible? Orientation. This is not the general standard new student orientation that every community college offers. This orientation is specific to ability to benefit. What are their obligations? What if they drop out? Do they have to pay this back? Do they not have to pay this back? How many hours do they need? What are they required to do in all of this? So the orientation is specific for ability to benefit students, about the ability to benefit option. Tutoring, if it's necessary, but tutoring can be sending them to the tutoring center on campus. It can be lining them up with a tutor in an adult ed program if that all works out. Career goal development, counseling, and counseling here is kind of case management. There's some advising, some academic advising possibly, but there's also dealing with transportation and support services and what do you do next and how does that all work together, and then follow-up. So even after they're into the class, checking back in with them. How's it going? Do you need some help? What can we help with? But these are all 6 pieces that are required within the plan, and they're all explained what that means within the plan. Now, participating institutions. Institutional obligations. This is what you're required to do to be part of this. You must request to be part of this plan. Now, via the form, there's a form that I'm going to give you a link to that you can fill out and submit to me. You need to collaborate internally and within your institution to enroll, support, and track eligible students per the requirements of this state plan process. You need to submit program implementation reports on an annual basis. So, of course, we have to do reporting. We have to document all of this. They will be 1-year annual reports. We're not doing it quarterly, so they'll be due August 30th. Maintain a success rate of 95% as defined in Section 6 or be in compliance with Section 9. A couple of different places that you can check into, but there's a success rate requirement that we have to build in. Now, students are not obligated to enroll a minimum number of students in ATB via the state-defined process, even if they have opted into the plan. So what this means is, as of today, I just counted earlier this morning, and I think I'm at 16 colleges across the state have said, we want to be on this list. If your college does not put their name on this list, your college cannot utilize this plan, period. The department, we cannot go back and add your name later. if we go back and add your name later, it requires an entire rewrite of the entire plan, and the whole process starts all over. We don't want to do that. We would much rather institutions opt in now and then choose, you know what, we're not going to do this. We're going to wait. We're going to sit out. Fine. You don't have to. There is not a minimum number of students you have to use this plan for. But if you do not opt in, you cannot use this plan. And we would like everyone to be able to use this plan if possible. So what does that mean? What's next? That means participating institutions complete the institutional interest form and submit to me. There's my email by November 12th, because we plan to submit to the U.S. Department of Education for review and approval on November the 15th. The 12th is a Friday, the 15th is a Monday. So the sooner you can get me those forms, the easier it will be for me to add your name to plans. And we want to submit it November 15th because they have up to 6 months to accept this. So if you're doing some math, 6 months makes that the middle of May. That gives us 6 weeks in order to get some training done for this before the new fiscal year starts in July, which is our goal. Our goal is to have this ready to go, ready for all of you to be able to utilize starting July 1 of fiscal year 23. Okay, so send me your forms. All right, resources. In this slide deck, Sarah, Tara, are these slides on that website? I believe it is, but
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh.
So you can go into the slides, go into these links. When the US DOE, Department of Ed, ATB, their FAQ, CLASP has been a huge part of ability to benefit. So they've got some resources you can look at. This third one, ICCB, ATB resources, is where the plan is, the interest form is, that one pager is, we have an FAQ on there. Whitney Thompson and I did 2 different webinar information sharings in September. One of those we recorded and posted on there. The slide deck from those recordings, very similar to the slides, but a little bit different, are on there. So there's lots of information there that if you are interested, talk to the interest form. It comes from it. It's pretty simple. It explains what's required and what's not, and it needs signed by your college president. And it will need, there's some other details, like we need to know your institution name, the APC you're in, who's submitting it, with an email and contact information for them, president's signature and date, and submission. It's a single page. But again, if you do not submit prior to November 12th, you will not be able to utilize this as a third way of getting students the option of getting some financial aid help. So now we are to questions. Ooh, we got a lot of them in the chat, or maybe we don't have a lot in the chat. I don't know. I'm opening the chat. So I'm scrolling back up to after the
Angela. Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to read it to you. So
Sure.
the first question we have is, how does this opt-in work with District 508, which has a City Colleges of Chicago? Should we opt in as a district or individually or as a colleges?
So Whitney said that was up to you. You could do one form that would cover your entire system, or you could do individually. I can tell you at this point, I have received one form from one individual institution. I have not received a full, so it really is up to to city colleges how you want to do it. If you want to do it as a whole system, that's fine. We'll take one letter signed off that way. But we do have one at this point from one of your institutions. If you want specifics, you can email me and I'll be happy to tell you which institution that is, because partially I can't remember off the top of my head right now without looking at that list.
And then we have posted Angela's email in the chat. So both Tara and I, we got you supported, Angela.
All right.
Have those in the chat. Are there other questions? Also, I believe if you need to, you can unmute or raise your hand and we can unmute you if you'd like to ask a question. The next one that has popped in is the date the participation form to be turned in to you is November 12th. Is that correct?
Yes, November the 12th is due to me by then. I would love it if it was the 10th or the 11th, but you know, I'm not going to be picky because I need to send that up the line for official approval and to be submitted on the 15th, which is Monday. And I kind of like my Saturdays and Sundays off.
Thank you, Angela. Are there numbers of credit restrictions on approved programs?
Restrictions. I don't understand the question.
Suzanne, can you give us a little bit more detail on that question, please?
Number of credit restrictions.
I believe you're able to unmute yourself, Suzanne, or you can just type that in the chat.
So I don't know that this is specifically to Susan, but I can tell you that if a student is enrolled, once they earn that 6 college credit, two things happen. Either students, they can stay on the plan and still continue to utilize the plan, or if they earn 6 college credits, they can roll over to a regular ability to benefit student. But once they earn their high school diploma, they automatically go into the regular financial aid stream, just like everyone else would. So if this is a year-long process and they're even within their IET, they take some classes, they start earning some credit, they eventually take and pass all of the different parts of their HSE, then as soon as they pass that, they are no longer an ability to benefit student. They automatically revert over to being a standard, again, normal, I hate that word, traditional, not really better, financial aid student at a community college, because they have, they're now able to check that box on the FAFSA form.
So I'll clarify my question. Somebody had mentioned that because this is a career pathway program, the career pathways they're choosing have to be a certain amount of credits, either more or less than that. Is there a restriction on that?
So I took the career pathway slide out of this because I thought, oh, I don't want to overkill this. There is not, I have not heard that there is a college, there's not a credit hour.
Maximum or minimum, I would go either way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, there is not a max or minimum number of credit hours that must be attached to the career pathway, but they do have to be enrolled in one of those career pathways.
Understood.
So as IETs, I can tell you that as IETs are being approved through adult ed, there is a line on that letter that says this is an eligible career pathway for ability to benefit options if you choose to go that route. But we do not, part of the issue with career pathways is who defines those? What are they? Well, Department of Ed says they're not defining them. And as a state, we're not defining them. So an eligible career pathway is what happens within your college that you are able to determine is a career pathway. So taking an English class with a welding class by itself is not really a career pathway. But if you're able to take a couple of welding classes that build and they continue to build and they're stackable, that makes it more of a career pathway.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Angela, we have another question in there. You said that students who were in transitions are eligible, correct?
Yes.
And then even though they have technically met the requirements for graduation, but they have not taken the test for their diploma. Is that correct?
Correct. So until they have officially earned that diploma, credential, certificate, whatever pathway they're going, then that is correct. They are eligible. So even if they have passed 3 of the 4 sections on, say, the GED, they're still eligible for ability to benefit because they have not completed and earned that high school equivalency yet. And so how it typically runs is if they would take and pass that, say, in November, they don't kick them out of ATB in November they would finish that semester with them as an ATB student, meeting those requirements, doing what they need to do. And then starting in January, they would be reverted over to the normal federal financial aid student.
Excellent, thank you. We have about 3 more minutes left in this session. Are there any other questions for Angela?
If any of you come up against roadblocks at your institution and they're hesitant to do it, have them email me or give them the ICCB ATB resources page and send them there and let them do the research. I know there are people that are hesitant to do something, try something new or different. I get it. But if there's something I can do, I will do my best. I would love to see all of the colleges listed on this plan, but it is your institution's individual decision to make that.
Excellent, thank you. So really quickly, we are going to be moving into breakout sessions again. And again, you would go back to that fall convening spot. And you'll be able to click on the enter here. So we have 2 options for our afternoon. Oh, we do not have to have me all giant big. Thanks, whoever did that. 2:15 to 3:15 is when the breakout session starts. We've got about 2 minutes left here in this. So if you do have questions, go ahead and pop those in the chat. Team teaching, training at the College of Lake County, and then engaging partners in career pathways and bridge are our 2 options for our 2:15 to 3:15 breakout session. And then we will come together again this afternoon for introduction to apprenticeship and making the connection to apprenticeship. And then we'll wrap up and close out by 4 p.m. Angela, we
Yes,
have
ma'am.
one last question for you. It says,
Sure.
if you opt in, are you mandated to offer ability to benefit?
Are you mandated to offer what? I'm sorry, my ice was clinking in my cup.
The ability to benefit.
No, you are not. If just getting yourself on the list means you have it as an option in your back pocket if you so choose to use it. If you say, nope, not doing it, that's fine. But again, we cannot add anyone. The plans are good that when they approve them, they typically approve for 4 to 5 years. So if your institution does not get on the list now and you come to me in 6 months or in a year and say, we really want in, I'm unfortunately going to have to probably say, sorry, I can't do that until we write a rewrite in 4 years, because I don't really want to rewrite this entire plan for one little line. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm not that generous.
We have one other question. Can we email you to confirm we are on the list?
Absolutely. Yep.
And then before we wrap up with our last few minutes, Sarah, do you want to give us the times and dates, or Tara, I see your camera on, for the weekly meeting, the office hours that are available from ICCB if you have questions as we move through the rest of the year? So you all can spotlight Tara and she can share those dates.
Hello. So are you referring to the ICAPS office hours?
Yes, please, just one last plug. We started with that plug. I think we should wrap up with that plug.
Absolutely. And I'm going to put the registration link in the chat because I have it right here. And we meet every other Thursday at 11 a.m. and we hang out in there for an hour. So whenever you can pop in, we would love to see you. There's the registration, and on that registration, it has the remaining dates for the rest of the year. And then we'll move into our virtual learning communities after that. So it's been great. We would love you to join us in ICAPS office hours every other Thursday at 11 a.m. And the registration link is in the chat. And you can always email me for that as well. And
So can I add that while we hang out and have fun, we are actually usually a little productive.
well, yes, I just meant they don't have to come from 11 to 12. Whenever you want to come, we'll be there.
Yes, and yes, you're available if you teach till 11:30 and you have to jump in 11:45, that's fine.
Absolutely. And it's great to hear from other programs. Some of the people that have popped in keep coming back. They might have a couple follow-up questions, but they might also want to hear what we heard back, from topics that were brought up in the ICAPS hours before. So it's just kind of nice to hear from other programs, ICAPS and kind of all things transition. So we'd love you to pop by, and thank you to Angela for coming. She answers policy questions, fires them off. So it's really been great. So.
If I could just mention also at the beginning of this, we showed a promo for the ICAPS office hours, and we're short on time, but at the end of today, we'll show it again. So Angela was quite a effective performer in that video. So you'll want to see it later.
It's Grammy worthy. It's
Yeah,
definitely.
for
Yeah,
sure.
Grammy.
For sure.
Mhm.
Well,
All right.
thank you. Anything else that we need to cover
Everyone.
before we dismiss to breakout sessions? Again, thank you all for your time and great questions today. And again, as always, SIPDC, ICCB, and ICSPS are here to support you as we move through the excitement of the ICAPS. So with that, we'll close out and you can all have 15 minutes before we start our next breakout session.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.